This is Papa Smurf. You're listening to Our Lifestyle, the podcast, with ODB and the Mayor.
Yo, it's Our Lifestyle Podcast, episode 294, and if you've been a long-time listener, you know that this is going to be a best-of episode during the summer 2022. We're basically doing kind of bi-weekly episodes, as I've mentioned the last couple of weeks, but we're going to keep the show going with some of our best-of content. Now, ironically, this week I actually was working on a little bit of new content mixed in with some old content, and I talked with Lucky up in Canada because he's had some cool stuff going on lately. And I'm going to have to redo that because for whatever reason, we had some awesome audio. It just did not save how, I go about, this podcast. It just did not save. So that was a little bit of a downer. But I told myself, hey, we got to keep it on. And that's what we're doing. So we want to give a huge shout out to Scraping the Coast. Many of you are on your way or already in Biloxi for the 20th anniversary of Scraping the Coast. Miggity Mike, the Mayor, and Mrs. Mayor will be out there. I am staying back. Saturday is the last day that I'll be doing the wiring in my garage. The homie Fred is coming by, and we're going to hopefully finish that up. I have 2, 3, 4 parts so far of what we've been doing on our YouTube channel. You could check it out. Again, we're doing the wiring in the metal building that I put up years ago. And I'm trying to get that wrapped so that we can kind of trigger the next step to get the power release because we're getting the new meter for the garage area of the shop. So that's what I got going down. So I'm not going to be at Scraping. I just talked to Mike a few minutes ago. He's on his way with Mrs. Mayor, and they are going to be set up inside. We've got a ton of skate decks. We've got the new Time Machine merchandise. And the stuff is going crazy quick, even the online orders, so we've got to shut the website down. If you're in Biloxi, have fun at Scraping the Coast. Make sure you tag Scraping the Coast Show on Instagram and hashtag Scraping the Coast. Now, many of you also are going to be at East Tennessee Showdown. Love that show. I've been there before. I actually wish I could have made it this year, and just with what I got going on, I just could not. Maybe next year I'll make it. It is unfortunate those two shows are on the same weekend, but rest assured there's plenty to go around, and I know whether you're in Tennessee or you're in Biloxi, you're going to be having a damn good time. So again, huge shout out to Scraping the Coast. On this episode, right, so this quick intro that I'm doing for this best of, I'm going to rerun Mike Finnegan's audio. Now, everybody knows Mike Finnegan, and the crazy thing is, obviously, he's got his original roots are with Mini Truckin. Since we've had him on, that was back on episode 75, okay? We're on almost episode 300, and it's amazing to me that, we got a chance to sit down with him, and it was all that, pretty good amount of time ago. What's awesome, though, is, whether you're watching Faster with Finnegan or you're watching Roadkill, all of that success, all of those shows are, of course, available through Motor Trend, which I've been recently hooked to, watching all the shows via the Apple TV. Now, ironically enough, I think it was about 4 years ago, so it was late July of 2018, so 4 years ago, and I'll run Mike's audio in just a minute. Now, we want to thank all of our sponsors. You guys hear me talk about them all the time and all the different episodes. But when Mike is going to be out there at Scraping the Coast, he's going to have a ton of skate decks. And those skate decks come from Joey Dilworth. Joey is kind of the guy that supplies the entire truck scene, whether it's Lone Star Throwdown, Scraping the Coast, Bayou Showdown, Mini Nats. These crazy awesome shows out there, all of those skate decks come through Joey. He's got it on lock. He gets them done quick. Look up Get Decked. It's Joey at Get Decked. He even does one-off skate decks. So if you're looking for a gift for your significant other for a born day or Christmas, that type of deal, Joey can do it. You can send him a photo. He can, obviously work with if you've got artwork and you want to move it around, landscape, portrait, that type of stuff, depending on the skate deck and your artwork. Joey at Get Deck can make it happen. I know Scraping the Coast is going to have a ton of skate decks as well, and it's cool because they have 4 different shirts available, banners, stickers, as well as, of course, skate decks, as we mentioned. So get out, hopefully, to Scraping the Coast and get your merchandise, and, man, just have fun. I think from that, I have a ton of stuff lined up. I'm still working to get Gendro's audio done. We've got a couple other legends, so I don't know next week what episode I'm going to run yet. It's really going to kind of depend on a couple things. So I'm super excited about that. We're not kind of even though we're taking, every other week off a little bit. Obviously, I still got to edit. I still got to pull this stuff together. We are keeping the pedal stomped, and I'm telling you, the next few shows, if everything goes well, we're going to have some awesome, awesome, awesome episodes. I certainly appreciate everyone that continues to come back and listen. Depending on how you're following us, make sure you hit subscribe or follow. Of course, these now batch to YouTube, so you can listen there as well. We don't use copyrighted music, so there's nothing really blanked out, so to speak. Now, next week is going to be July 1st, so a week from today if you're a Day 1 listener. On July 1st, we'll have a ton of scene updates. There's just been a lot of cool stuff going on, so I'll cover all of those. We'll have Mike on, hopefully, to recap Scraping the Coast, which will be badass. And then a week from, or 2 weeks from now, you're basically going to be at Southern Tradition. That's the 9th and 10th up in Canton, Georgia. So that's going to be awesome as well. But, between Southern Tradition coming up, Camp and Drag, Slamboree, the Spark Show, which is going to be, in August, and there's just a lot of good stuff going on the truck scene. I would remind everyone, too, Mike Finnegan is a huge guest kind of in the automotive world now. We're not just mini trucks on this podcast. We talk about a little bit of old school BMX, which there's going to be more on that coming. We talk about pretty much whether it's low riders, mini trucks, hip hop, it. We talk about it here. So again, subscribe and or follow if you found us recently, and enjoy this audio with Mike Finnegan, an OG and someone that has had just tremendous success. Hit up ourlifestylepodcast.com if you want to buy some merch. The site will be shut down for a few days. Stay on the rise, ODB. We got you. Peace. We love sitting down with different folks within the scene, and we've got a guest that we've been looking at having on for a minute, Mr. Mike Finnegan. What's going down, Mike?
Hey, man. Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
No doubt. Hey, I appreciate all the love on Our Lifestyle, the podcast, and some of the likes as well over on the C30 Addict. We're going to talk about the ramp truck and a few things. But I have to start off, Mike. You're a guy that when I look at, your knowledge, you know a lot about shit that's automotive. How did you get your start as far as some of the knowledge as far as wrenching on motors and things like that?
I've been really lucky. I really don't have any formal training. I took a couple of years of high school auto shop, but that's about it. After that, it was just hanging out with people that knew more than I did and listening to them, and then going home and buying tools and breaking stuff. I've destroyed a lot of stuff, and some of the stuff I built in the early years, it's stuff I would be embarrassed to build today. So, but that's how you learn. We can't all go to school for this.
There's no doubt about it. I've seen you kind of make some of those references on Roadkill, which I think is cool that you really kind of just speak the truth. Now, going back a long time, I know we're about the same age, but when I was maybe kind of first getting into mini trucking, I recall that you made the trek from, I believe it was New York to the West Coast. Now, many know the story, but can you give us maybe a little bit of insight into how that trek happened?
Oh, God, that's as roadkill as it gets in terms of a road trip. I was born and raised in Southern California and moved to New York around 95, I think. I went out there because my dad had taken a job out there. My mom, my brother, the whole family just moved. Mm-hmm. And eventually, I didn't go right away. I just graduated high school and, was in love with a girl and loved mini trucking, and I wasn't going to leave California. So I stuck around for about a year after the family moved. And then I think I got tired of being broke. So I threw everything in my mini truck. It was a 94 Toyota standard cab on air shocks. And drove cross country to New York and got there and immediately met like the only mini trucker within 50 miles. It was it was funny because I get into town and the next day there's a local car cruise. So I go to it and it was me and one other mini trucker amongst nothing but hot rods and muscle cars. So we instantly had to become friends because there was no one else to hang out with. And I was there probably, from 95 to 2000 going to school. And then I met Courtney Hallowell, and once I realized what he did for a living, I decided that's what I wanted to do. And so he kind of coached me through what classes to take in college. And then he was at Street Trucks by the time I graduated, and Mike Self was working at Mini Truckin. Mm-hmm. And so I graduate school, I hit the road to go back to California and just take this hellacious road trip in this beat up motorhome. And along the way, end up talking to Mike Self, who tells me he's about to quit Mini Truckin', and I convinced him, I think, not to quit until I made it back to California. And so he quits. I coast into California in a shitty motorhome on fumes and drag my Tacoma into the Mini Truckin' magazine office and end up getting a job there. And it's just been a whirlwind dream ever since then, you know?
That's like one of the classic stories where someone wants to become an actor and they just kind of move to LA and then somehow they become a big star. But I know some of the details kind of align with that.
I had a lot of lucky breaks, you know. I mean, if I hadn't met Mike Self, it might have been a Texas heat wave when I ran into him during my road trip. And I think that was when he told me he was quitting. And then if I hadn't met Courtney, I never would have graduated college because I was just treading water. I was going to college, but I had no idea why. And even when I moved to California, my ex-girlfriend and I lived in that motorhome in front of Courtney's house for, Jesus, I don't even know how long. It was probably a solid month or two before I got the job and got some money saved up to get an apartment, you know? And, I had a lot of lucky breaks leading up to that moment and ever since then.
Well, I think it's smart that a lot of people that do sometimes have a lucky break, as you mentioned, you kind of ran with it, and you didn't just let it flutter or whatever the word is. So I think that's pretty badass. Now, when I think back to you get out back to the West Coast, and you were at that time you were at Mini Truckin', right? And then later on it morphed into, I think you were at the editor of Sport Truck for a while. Can you tell us a little bit about maybe some of the good memories from those times?
Oh yeah, my time at Mini Truckin' was just awesome because, I was just so hardcore about the scene and hanging out with my friends, and I was driving and flying everywhere to shows. I got to go to Show Fest, in Greenville before it kind of got out of control. Mm-hmm. Heat Wave, some of the first events in Laughlin at the AV, it was just a lot of fun. A lot of just crazy things were happening back then. Guys were just getting into turboing their mini trucks, which is how I ended up turboing my mini truck. And, it was just a good time in my life. It was a lot of, truck runs and drunken nights and,
yeah, the good old days.
And it all went by really fast because I was only trucking, I think, for probably 2 years before I moved to Off-Road Magazine because I was really interested in the Baja scene and desert racing and, trucks you could jump. And I was there for probably about 2 years, and then I moved on to Hot Boat Magazine.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Because I had grown up with jet boats, thanks to my parents. And so I got all into that. And then I was there a couple of years there. And then the job at Sport Truck opened up, and it was a chance to come back and work with some friends of mine, Mini Truckin' and Off-Road Magazine. So I came back there, and I think I was there 4 years. We had a lot of fun. Kind of, Sport Truck was kind of floundering at that point. Mm-hmm. Sport Truck traditionally was your old man's magazine. It was all just 4.6 drops and rakes and, air intakes and performance and stuff like that. And the guys that worked there, like John O'Neill, and Kalen Head, and I forgot who else was there when I first arrived, but those guys were kind of moving in a direction of, laying stuff on the ground was cool. And they had already kind of put a template in place for Sport Truck where it was pretty much, in my opinion, it was one of the coolest magazines out at that time. And so when I got there, it was pretty easy to just take what they were doing and just keep pushing them, in that direction. That lasted till 2009 when the company that owned Sport Truck also owned its competition, which was Truckin. And the decision was made to keep Truckin magazine intact and to shut down Sport Truck. And so even though we were profitable, we were out of business and we all got laid off. And I think I was out of work probably 6 months before I got the call to go to Hot Rod magazine. And then my life's just kind of been upside down ever since. In a good way, though.
Hells yeah. So I got to ask you, it seems like in one of the, and we'll talk a little bit about Finnegan's Garage on YouTube, which I love, there's a C10 that, if I remember correctly from watching it, you reacquired. Wasn't that the C10 that you started or maybe acquired originally when you were at Sport Truck?
Yeah. Back in 2007, I think, Mike Alexander, who was at Mini Truckin at the time, he and I don't know what happened. We just decided neither one of us would finish a truck anytime soon if we didn't just make a bet and force ourselves to finish by a date. And by then, I had traded away my Tacoma Burnt Taco, and I had been driving around a long travel Toyota Tundra that I used to take to the desert and jump, but I didn't have anything lowered, and it bummed me out, and I missed, driving lowered trucks. So I had bought this C10, and at the time they were kind of like finding a short bed 67 C10 at the time was kind of hard. And I don't even know what that was, but when I finally decided I wanted a lower truck, I started searching Craigslist and whatnot. Dude, I couldn't find one. I drove all the way from Orange County, California up to Mount St. Helena, which is above Napa. And it was far to buy this truck off of a farmer, and it was a pile of crap. And got back home, and Alexander got the bright idea to challenge each other to get our trucks running and driving and laid out in time to go to the Forbidden Fantasy show. And we did it. We both made it. It was crazy. I'd spent a ridiculous amount of money and took a whole lot of time at night and weekends and even away from work to work on that truck. But we finally got it running and driving, and it had a tube chassis, it had an independent rear suspension, it had an LS2 in it, and 4 L65E automatic trans, and it laid the rocker on the ground on 22s back in, I think it was 2007, 2008, and it was cool. It was a lot of fun. And then I don't know what happened. I get laid off, life changes, broke probably at the time, and sold it to a buddy of mine, Justin, in 2008 or 9. And then 10 years later, I run into him just at a car show in Ohio. And he tells me he tells me he's still got it. It sat under a car cover in the corner of his shop for 10 years. He didn't touch it at all.
Oh, that's right, because you kind of told that story on that episode of Finnegan's Garage, I think.
Yeah, so I was like, wow, dude, because I loved that truck. It was probably the most well-fabricated thing I'd built to date. And a large portion of that was because of the friends I, was working with at the time. They were better fabricators than I were, so I was learning from them. And I thought, God, it would be great to have that truck back and to finally finish it. And so I made a deal to buy it back without the motor and trans, and I got it back, I don't know, last summer or the summer before, I forget. And so I've been working on it off and on ever since, and hopefully next year it'll be on the road again and I can go cruise to a show again, because I haven't been to a truck show in God knows how long.
Yeah, you're going to show up like, damn, there he is, man. Finnegan in the house.
So much fun.
Yeah, that's good shit. Now, I don't know. I might have a vague memory of this. Did you ever have a C10 that was stolen? I remember. I don't know if it was from the Street Source days. For some reason, I remember that, but maybe that wasn't a truck you owned.
No, you're right. I did. I think this is my third 67 to 72. I had a 69. I think I had two 69s, and one of them I had let's see the sequence of events. I had that crappy motorhome that I traded for a crew cab dually.
I remember that dually. Famous dually.
Then I traded, famous dually. Then I traded that dually. I was drunk at, I think, a council run.
I remember hearing that story.
Yeah, I think I was drunk at a council run with Chappie from Severed Ties, Utah, and we were like sitting there, and he's like, "I want the dually," and I was like, "Dude, your truck's rad." And we left the run like the next morning and drove all the way back to California and traded trucks. Like, it was nuts. Like, he took the dually and loaded it on a car trailer that it barely fit on, and he left his bagged and body drop 69, with me. And I love that thing. It was orange. It was laid out on 18-inch wheels. The thing was cool. And I had that thing long enough to back half it, take the bags off and put hydraulics on it. And then a dickhead guy I knew, who I thought was my friend, when I was gone on my honeymoon, parted the truck out. He got pissed off at me and he parted the truck out. And then told me it was stolen, and from his shop. And I believed him at the time. I didn't know any better. And so I was like, holy crap, my truck got stolen. And then like 2 years later, a mutual friend of ours was like, nah, dude, it didn't get stolen. He parted that shit out. I was like, oh.
You're like, holy shit.
Yeah. And it makes sense, because he was the kind of guy that, like, he was a shop owner who, he would take in too many cars, couldn't finish anything for anybody. Customers would show up and he'd hide under his desk, like literally hide under his desk. Like, he was pretty much a scumbag. And so it makes sense that,
some shady shit would go down. Exactly.
Yeah. I'm not surprised. And, it's just kind of one of those things. Lesson learned: don't leave your truck sitting around too long at somebody's shop.
Yeah,
you might not get it back.
We've heard those stories. So You mentioned Burnt Taco. We know the history with the Tacoma. I think a lot of people do, but can you give us just maybe like a bullet pointed rundown of, you built this famous truck. We all loved it, and it kind of moved on, and it kind of took on a life of its own. For anybody that doesn't know the story, can you kind of give us just a little bit of insight on it?
Yeah. So it goes back to my first mini truck. I bought a brand new '94 Toyota Standard Cab, just stripped down truck. Mm-hmm. Bought it from Longo Toyota in California. It was like $7,400 brand new.
Wow.
It had crank windows, no AC, no power steering. Even the back bumper wasn't there. That was optional. Mm-hmm. And that was the truck I drove to New York. And I get to New York, and I'm trying to be a normal human being with a mini truck. And, it was hard to do when winter would roll around. I'd try to go snowboarding, and I would get stuck at the ski resort because the parking lot was uphill to leave, and like more than once I'd be in that truck, and there'd be snow on the ground, and I just have to leave it there because I couldn't get out of the parking lot, and more than once I'd try to drive to college and end up in a ditch because the truck spun out, because
right.
it was on 17-inch probe wheels with, Euro radial TAs, and it sucked during the winter. And one night I'm driving home from work, and I slid into a snowbank for like the 40th time, and I just lost it. I was like, that's it. I'm done. And I looked across the street, and there was a Nissan dealer. So I walked right in there and traded it in on a Nissan 4x4 in 1997. And I thought that 4x4, it was black. It kind of, I don't know, in my head, it kind of reminded me of the truck from Back to the Future, even though it wasn't a Toyota. And so I treated it like a monster truck. I jumped the hell out of that thing. I'd drive through the woods and the bushes and just beat the crap out of this truck. But once winter was over and the sun was out again, my brand new Nissan was scratched, dented. It was trashed. The sway bar was dangling. It was pretty beat up. And then I wanted to cruise again. I wanted a mini truck again. So I then drove to a Toyota dealership and bought a 97 Tacoma. And the 97 Tacoma was what ultimately turned into Burnt Taco. And I don't think a lot of people know this, but the reason it ended up being called Burnt Taco is because I caught it on fire when I was working on it.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, and so that story is that a lot of that truck got built at my friend Sean's shop. We had step notched it, and I was grinding something on the chassis. I don't even know what it was, but this truck, I think it still had paper plates on it. It was brand new, and I had a bed sheet over the cab trying to protect the glass from the welding, from the grinding sparks. And I'm grinding, and the sparks are hitting it. And it's very, very loud in the shop. I'm not looking, and the sheet over the cab caught on fire, and so did my shirt. And it burnt a perfect circle on my gut in the shirt.
Holy shit. And
it lit the cab of the truck on fire. And we got it put out, and it really didn't get hurt or anything, but that's how the truck became known as Burnt Taco. It was because it caught on fire.
Yeah, so that's crazy. So you build it, right? And it comes up with this, awesome name, the graphics, even the logo on the back was sick, the interior. It had like a touch of everything once it was finished. So I think you mentioned earlier, you sell the truck, and it's kind of taken on a life of its own, and there was an accident, I believe. There's just a lot of shit that's happened to that Tacoma.
Yeah, it's funny. Every time I get tagged constantly on Facebook, anytime someone asks about it, and it seems like the story's been told 3,000 times. But yeah, so I bag it and I body drop it in my home garage in New York, in my parents' garage. And the funny part about I had traded in the Nissan on the Tacoma, and so I'm upside down. Like, I don't know how much money I lost on the Nissan, but I was upside down on it. And so I buy this truck, come home, and my dad's like, "What the hell? That's the second truck you bought in 6 months. What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Trust me, I know what I'm doing, right?" So my parents go away, and I think at the time my dad took a job in Saudi Arabia, and he and my mom moved there for 3 years. And they left my brother and I, both of us in college, in their house in New York, which was just a bad idea. I mean, we partied our asses off.
I'm thinking Snoop Dogg Gin and Juice video, you know what I mean?
Oh, we literally had pimp and hoe parties in their house. It was awesome. And but one of the things that actually set my dad over the edge was he came home to find his Corvette out in the driveway. And they had a 3-car garage. Like, we were fully middle class. Like, we, trust me, I'm not from the hood. I never starved. But my dad comes home, finds this Corvette in the driveway, and all 3 garage doors are shut. And he opens the garage doors, and my brand new Tacoma is blown apart completely because I'm body dropping it in his garage. And he's just like, "What the hell? You're making payments? Like, nothing's labeled, like,
sure.
There's no bags with, screws labeled, this is for the doors, and like none of that. And my dad fully believes I will never put it back together. And it took about 6 months, I think, of working every night after work with my roommate Troll. But we bagged it, we body dropped it, took it to a body shop in Middletown, New York, called Eurocraft Collision. Those dudes painted it Porsche Riviera blue. I think my ex-girlfriend actually fronted me the money for the KMC Alfs, and got the truck together and running with a tweed interior, and then moved to California. And then I get there and we turbo the thing and shot it for Mini Truckin for Tech Article, I think. And one night, it was like right after a Severtized meeting or one of the Severtized shows. It was just sitting idling in a parking lot for like 10 minutes and talking to people. And the turbo got so hot that it bubbled the paint on the hood. And, the hood was kind of messed up. And so I called Frank Recklin out of Phoenix. And I said, "Hey, I need my hood touched up. And I know you paint, can you help me out?" And he says, "Sure." So I take the truck to him, and it was there for a little while. And he calls me one day and he's like, "Don't ask any questions. Just order all this paint and send it to me." And I had a friend at House of Color, and I said, "All right." And I really didn't, they were just paint codes. I didn't even know what it was, right? So I send this list to my buddy at House of Color, and he says, "Are you sure?" He said, "This is like a pallet of paint." I'm like, "Dude, I don't know. I don't know what he's doing." And so I call him. I'm like, "All right, this stuff's coming. What are you going to do? Like, just a little graphic over the hood to fix this spot?" And he's like, yeah, don't worry about it. And I don't remember how long it took, but he called me one night and said, "Get out here." And I get out there, and he's put 72 colors on this thing.
Insane.
I mean, it is ridiculous. And a couple of his friends redid the stereo in it, built that crazy console with the 3/8-inch subs and the skull. And I mean, they went off. The truck was incredible. And I'm the least artistic person I know, so I'll ruin a stick figure if I try and draw it. So
same here.
I could have never told him, hey, he did it all on his own. And it was cool, man. I really liked that one side of the truck was completely different than the other. You know, if I hadn't been broke at the time, I would have got a different set of wheels for one side. It's just so it looked like two different trucks, but the thing was awesome. And ultimately, the reason I got rid of it was once it was back in California, I kept getting pulled over driving to the mini truck office by the same Cal State Fullerton cop who kept writing me fix-it tickets for things I couldn't fix. Like I had shaved the front corner lamps off of it, and he would write me a ticket for modified lighting, and I couldn't fix the modified lighting. You know, there just wasn't a way to do it. And I think I had racked up like $1,000 in fix-it tickets. And finally I was just like, dude, I got to get rid of this truck. I can't even drive it. And so I traded it away for another dually. And Troy, the guy that had traded me, I think he was commuting back and forth to Vegas in it to see his kid because it got better mileage than his dually did. And then he sold it to a woman that I had never met. And the story that I heard was that she got tired of people asking if that was Mike Finnegan's truck. And so that's why she painted it that kind of purple and gray paint job, which to me, I wasn't into it, but it wasn't my truck anymore. So I lost track of it. And then I kept hearing about it during kind of the days where I was at Sport Truck. And I had a chance to buy it back once when some kid in Oceanside owned it. And I didn't because he had told me that he had overheated it a couple times and, the motor wasn't running right. And I was like, forget it. And then, I don't know, a year later, I got the photos that everybody else got of it rolled over in a ditch and totaled.
I know. It's so crazy how these trucks, like Farva's Blazer, the Blazerado, and some of them, it's crazy that they can resurrect some of them. Some of them, as well as I do, Mike, it's like, they're a lost cause, but they do it.
Yeah, and I don't know the exact details, but it puts a smile on my face whenever someone brings this up because some kid, I don't know if he's a kid or not, but some guy in, I think Fresno, somewhere out in that area, has got whatever's left of that truck. If you look in the cowl under the vents, you can see graphics going through them and graphics on the firewall from whatever pieces of burnt taco he's still got. I think he's got the motor and part of the cab. And, is that burnt taco? I don't know. But, when I look at the graphics, I think it is.
Right.
So,
yeah,
I'm stoked he's still, I'm stoked someone's still driving it around, It would be really cool to see somebody restore it back to either, the solid blue paint job or the one Frank did. I think the one Frank did would be really, really expensive to replicate, but, either way it would be cool. Cause I think right now it's silver and it's got the wrong front end on it. Like it has a later model Tacoma front end on it, not the 97.
Yeah,
but,
gotcha. And what's crazy to me is I'm a big Back to the Future fan, and I've been watching on YouTube recently. There's a guy, and I forget how to say his channel, but he'll go and he'll seek out the movie cars, and some of them, as well as I do, they stayed in the Universal backlot. They rotted away. Well, of course, Back to the Future and Universal got behind restoring them. Now, the Toyota truck that you mentioned from the first Back to the Future was crushed, but the one that they used for Part 2 and Part 3 that was very similar, they did like a full restoration, bead blasted it and everything. I think it's crazy how, with the history, whether it be a mini truck or a movie car, that people are, they have the passion to do it. I think it's badass.
Yeah. I don't, and I dig seeing people do that. Like, there was a website for one of the cars from the movie Two Lane Blacktop, which is a favorite movie of mine. It's an old hot rod movie, and somebody restored one of the 55 Chevys from that movie, one of the camera cars, and somebody else had a website, and I don't think it's up anymore, where they had restored the Camaro from the movie Better Off Dead, and
Nice.
which is an excellent John Cusack comedy. And so it's cool that people, are passionate enough to save stuff like that.
Well,
and I've seen trucks that I don't know if they're tributes or whatever you want to call them, but that look real similar to Burnt Taco, man. And it's cool to see. It's really cool.
Yeah, it is really cool. And, I got one thing for you. I want my $2, man. I love that part of the movie.
Yeah, me too.
Well, I went to the Rad BMX event, and, we're similar age. And when I was growing up, I was give or take 7, 8 years old. Rad comes out in 86, and we watch it as many kids of the 80s did over and over on this VHS wherever my dad.
Did you go ride Hell Track, dude?
Yeah, so I went there, right, Mike? I'm there, and I'm like, okay, I knew when I went there that I wasn't going to ride it, because I'm like, and I climbed up the deal, and I looked down, and I'm like, you could have said, hey, dude, I'll give you fucking 10 grand right now, and I wouldn't have dropped in on that shit. I was like, I'm going to hurt myself, because I was never good, so I had an out, you know what I mean?
Well, dude, I was, I didn't know this was happening. I found out about it on Instagram and was so bummed that I couldn't go. But there's footage of guys who, they're older guys, but they used to be really good, just eating shit trying to drop in on that thing.
I know, and I was like, I don't want to be one of those guys. But I think Bill Allen, he's trying to find his kind of place. He was never like an A-list star, but I think he now has the Hell Track name copyrighted, so I think he's going to try to do more of this, which I think it'll be it'll have that cult following, which is cool.
Cool.
So, yeah, so there's another chance, I'm pretty sure. But I wanted to ask you, the magazine industry is something that has really stemmed so many careers. What was the transition like, maybe from behind the laptop and the lens more to behind the camera with Roadkill? Because I think it's a cool transition. Everything's going video now.
Yeah, it was an interesting time making the switch, because I really enjoy writing. I still do. I don't write nearly as much as I'd like to. But there came a moment, I don't know, about 2012, where I realized, thanks to the work we were doing on Roadkill,
Mm-hmm.
I realized, like, this is it. This is what I'm going to be doing. The magazine thing is gonna, I had to put my eggs in one basket or the other, because I was working for Hot Rod full time and doing Roadkill on the weekends,
Mm-hmm.
and it was destroying my life. I didn't have any time, and so there came a moment where I was like, all right, that's it. I had left Hot Rod and just did Roadkill, and it's the same company, and the offices are next to each other. But I made a physical departure from one to the other. I moved to the other building and just started doing Roadkill and another show called Hot Rod Garage. And it's not a massive change. One of the things I realized was that it really doesn't matter what you look like or who you are. If you can tell a story,
Mm-hmm.
if you can write a story, as long as you're not annoying, you can be in front of a camera and somebody will appreciate, the story you're telling. And so whether you're typing it or speaking it, it's kind of the same deal. And so I was lucky that I always enjoyed writing, and it came easy to me. So standing in front of a camera really wasn't that big of a deal. And I think we're going to find that a lot of people, that's kind of be the way things are going. I doubt my kids, I've got a 3-year-old and a 7-year-old, I doubt they're going to read magazines. They're growing up with iPads in their hands.
Yeah, even books, we've seen it. I'm still taking college classes. I'm on that 50-year plan. And, I read on the iPad, and it's easier than even having a laptop, if you can imagine that. Now, the show, one thing, I get anxiety, right? So I'm watching the show. I enjoy it just like the next guy. And, I'm getting my anxiety. And I know, like, there's a film crew that's following you, right? What is, like, maybe one of the toughest times that you've had? Because, like, I can imagine, like, there's sometimes I see, like, I can look and I'm like, man, if I was in that position, I'd be exhausted right now. I just want to get a beer or, a little bit of food and a good night rest. Is there ever times that just really fucking just push the limits?
Not recently. It's, in the beginning, it was pretty raw. It was just two guys with cameras following us, and one of those guys usually edited the episodes. And so, there's never been a script, but in the beginning, we had the leeway to go do really ridiculous things, like drive 500 miles in one day in a really crappy car to get somewhere.
Right.
And now, because it's now, because it's kind of a bigger thing and there's more people involved, we don't have the
limits to push.
Well, we don't have the freedom to go, yeah, we're going to make stay up for 20 hours, including the guys holding the cameras, and we're going to drive 500 miles. It's one of the things I've realized is, as passionate as everybody involved in roadkill is, and they kick ass, if you're not the guy driving the car, and if you're not the guy, making a jump or winning the race, like, there's only so much passion there. At the end of the day, everyone's
steam a little bit.
Well, yeah, like Freiberger and I are the ones really getting to have the fun. The other guys, they're filming it, and their job is much more difficult than ours. And so asking those guys to stay up for 20 hours because we want to build an engine on a picnic table, in a parking lot, and then drive, at 2 a.m, we did that for several years, and it got to the point where we were just going through crew people. They were burning out. And so these days, we try to work reasonably sane hours, like, I don't think more than like 12 hours a day, I think, is kind of like our cutoff now. So I don't remember what the beginning of that question was, but that's the end of it.
I know it's a little long. Well, so going back to the beginning, so before we go off the subject, I remember there was an episode, I want to say, where you guys were going to drive to Alaska. And I think you guys kept doing it. And like, when I'm watching that one, I'm like, I'm going, damn, man, these guys, like, they're just like, there was no quit, dude. And I just so appreciate that.
Yeah, that was, we were very lucky, because the first time we did it twice. And the first time we tried to do it, we didn't make it. We ran out of time, and we ended up at the Grand Canyon instead of Alaska. And so, the second time we did make it, and it was 9 days straight in a 68 Ranchero or 69 Ranchero, driving on the Alcan Highway, which is just a snow-covered road between Canada and Alaska. And so, we made it. Luckily, I don't even know how we made it, but we somehow drove all the way there and got to a frozen lake, and failed miserably at racing around a frozen lake in our rear-wheel drive car. And so, there were a lot of moments during that trip where we could have probably died, or, just gotten stuck and didn't make it, so we got lucky. We got very lucky.
Hells yeah. And I think, if I remember correctly, Mike, that people can go to Motor Trend, and that's where they can subscribe. Is that correct, to watch a lot of the all the episodes, I'm sure?
Right. So right now you can watch Roadkill on the Velocity channel, which is soon going to be named the Motor Trend channel on cable.
I heard about that. Okay.
But you can go to motortrend.com and watch Roadkill for free. Now, like, on the main page, there will be commercials in it, but you can watch the new episode for free. If you want to go back and watch the old stuff, you'll have to subscribe. And they've got like 3 different plans. It's a few bucks a month. But yeah, going forward, that'll be the portal for Roadkill. Is the company that owns it has created motortrend.com as a portal for not only Roadkill, but all the other properties they've got. Everything from Street Outlaws to, Bitchin' Rides and Roadkill and Hot Rod Garage, all that stuff is there.
Yeah, it's nice that it's all in one spot. Now, I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about, if I recall correctly, a few years ago, you moved to Georgia. And when I first saw it on Instagram, I was like, no, wait a minute, did he really move to Georgia? And that's not a bad place to live. It's a beautiful place. You got a nice home and stuff. What was the decision, like, to move there? And was it just that Roadkill, kind of that gig gives you a little bit of freedom?
The Roadkill thing, it was really lucky for me. It didn't play into the decision to move. It just made it a lot easier to move, because for Roadkill, we rarely start a road trip from LA anymore. So we're flying all the time. But the decision to move to Georgia was because I needed to be closer to my family. My dad was getting older and he had some medical issues. And over the years, a lot of my family, my brother, my mom, my dad, they all settled down in Georgia in a really beautiful area. And so we found a house with a big garage and just decided, we didn't want to live in an apartment in Orange County, California anymore. And for the same amount of money, you can go to Georgia and have a house, and, with a yard and a garage. And so it was pretty easy to make the decision. And then, like I said, I got lucky in that I was still able to do Roadkill, even though I didn't live in California anymore.
Hells yeah. So when I think of one of the things that comes to mind with you being there and whatnot is, we have a lot in common. I love C30 trucks. I run the C30 Addict page. You've got a famous square. I think you call it the ramp truck. Dude, I mean, dualies rock, especially the squares. But tell us a little bit about, your love for those square body dualies.
When I'm honest with myself, it turns out I'm a truck guy. And it turns out I really like Chevy trucks. And so I've had a few square bodies, and I love the body style. It's probably my favorite. I've had several 67 to 72s, but the 73 to 87 C10 and C20 and C30, and then if you go all the way up to 91 for I think the Suburban and whatnot. I love that body style, and so right now I own the Roadkill Ramp Truck, which is a vehicle we bought during a Roadkill episode, and we road tripped it to Bonneville to race Freiberger's Camaro. And so I bought it. I road tripped it from California to Georgia. I got about, 8 miles to the gallon driving back here. and I use it to haul my 55 Chevy to the racetrack. And the thing is, I love it. It's awesome. It's so much better than hauling a trailer. But the 454 and Turbo 400, it didn't make hardly any power, and it got crappy mileage. And so recently I ripped that stuff out and stuck a Cummins 12-valve diesel with compound turbos in it. And then I put a 47 RH 4-speed with a lockup converter behind it. And the guys from Power Driven Diesel came to my house and helped me do the swap. And it just got running the other day, and I'm stoked and ready to start road tripping the thing.
Hells yeah, man. Well, it's a cool truck. I've enjoyed watching a lot of the videos, especially when I think back to like episode 20. You talk about it was a hot truck, and you and I both know, especially with the 454 coming through the sheet metal there on the floor, and then there's really no jute, there's no barrier there. And I remember, I think you had a digital thermometer, and boom, it's like just super, super hot. So it's cool seeing a lot of those little videos that you put together. So I appreciate you doing that on YouTube.
Oh, no problem. Dude, you want to talk about hot? I drove it the other day with, I had to cut open the firewall and the floor because it's a 2-wheel drive truck. It doesn't have the tall trans tunnel like a 4x4.
Holy shit.
I drove it without the portion of the firewall and trans tunnel there. And holy crap, it was like driving with an oven. The moment the turbos spooled and made boost, it was like someone opened an oven door on my feet. And I immediately went back home and parked it and like, okay, I need to do some serious thermal containment and put some sheet metal there and whatever I can do, because this thing's going to be evil if I try to drive it right now.
Well, I'm taking a science class right now, and man, as much as I love science, it is fucking making me pull my hair out. I'm learning about thermal this and that, and I'm just like, damn. But the next thing, though, the 64 Lincoln I have, it's not as bad, but it needs a new, I think it's a heater control valve. So the heat, like when my wife and I are cruising in the car, even with the top down, there's heat that's coming out of the dash, and it's like baking. So I kind of get a little bit of what you're saying, but dude, that's no fun, man.
No, it's not. Like I can deal with no air conditioning, but dude, this is another level. This ain't even the same thing as having no air conditioning.
Hells yeah, man. So I got to ask this. We talked about minis. We know from a hot rod perspective, you're full bore there. You've got a couple famous builds over the years, the dually, but you also love these drag boats. And you mentioned earlier the connection with your parents. Tell us a little bit about the drag boats, anything you want to share there, because I think you had one at SEMA a few years ago that was connected up to a famous C10.
Yeah, that's my twin-turbo Placecraft drag boat that still isn't finished, even though you saw it at SEMA. It was like a lot of SEMA builds. It had a Bluetooth drive shaft and was missing the gas pedal, and it wasn't done, even though it looked really cool. I don't know. I've been drag boat racing off and on since 2002. I won a championships in 2008, and it's just something I really enjoy. It's kind of, I know it's the equivalent of like riding a crotch rocket with no windshield. The sensation of speed in a boat is way different than driving in a car. And so 100 miles an hour in a boat just feels like you're going 200 miles an hour. And I actually prefer, and and I'm more comfortable driving drag boats than I am racing cars. Plus, there's bikinis, which are always nice.
Hells yeah.
I would say you don't really have those bikinis at car races.
Yeah, you don't. My homie Tony Boss Bolin, his dad has a big truck stop, and they rebuild big 18-wheeler motors. I love being at the shop, and he's got a boat. It's got a cool name to it, and it has that 80s feel, and the motor's so crazy. I'll have to send you a photo of it. Every time I see it, I'm always like, damn, Finnegan would like to be up here and check this thing out because it's that rad.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, man, I'd love to see it.
Hells yeah, brother. So I was going to ask you, too, like, you're no stranger to kind of switch the subject to podcasting. When I think of, Mike Finnegan, I think of all the stuff you've done. You've really kind of hit on a lot of different media outlets. You had the Dukes Cast. Then you got the Kibbe and Finnegan show, which is, it's super sick. If you haven't checked it out, you definitely need to. But what do you like about podcasts that maybe other forms of media may not be able to highlight, Mike?
I love podcasting because it's really easy to do. One of the things I learned doing video is that it was a lot easier for me to write and photograph a story for a magazine than it is to tell that same story on video.
Mm-hmm.
Video it takes way more time and effort to make a video. And podcasting is awesome because you can just do it in your boxers, I don't prep for it really at all. My partner Kibbe does a lot of the heavy lifting on the podcast. I just turn on my laptop, open up Skype, and sit there and BS with him for an hour or two. And it's a lot of fun. I think I always thought it would be cool to be a radio DJ and just sit around and talk to people all day. And so this is kind of as close as that as I can get, The great thing about podcasting is anyone can do it. If somebody wants to just start talking and record it, you can put it on the internet. Same thing with YouTube. So it's very democratic. I like it.
Yeah, and I have to agree with you. When I started, Instagram started blowing up, and I had all these truck photos from Indy Truck Bash and Rezo for the Sever 10th, and I started sharing them, and then it got to the point where like that was kind of, running out of steam a little bit, and I'm like, well, what else can I do? And I'm like, you know what? I met so many good people over the years. I love telling the stories with the trucks, and then even someone like yourself that has really had a great opportunity to move around within the industry. It's always good kind of, syncing up with different guys like yourself, Mike.
Oh, man. Well, this has been great. Thanks for having me, dude. This is so much fun. Especially, I follow the C30 page, and I follow a lot of the mini trucking pages that are out there. Just, I don't have a mini truck personally anymore, but I love looking at them, and they, I look at them and I get all fired up to build another one. I haven't done it, but I think someday I will.
Well, hey, any way you slice and dice it, you're a mini trucking OG, whether you want to know it or not, man. I do have, yeah, no problem. A couple last questions. Like, what advice would you have for maybe a young buck or anyone out there that's looking to kind of, pave a way for themselves in the automotive scene, whether it be trucks or hot rods or a different outlet as far as media goes? Any advice you have for someone out there?
Well, I think, it depends on what they want to do. If you want to write about them or photograph them, the thing I'd say now is learn a lot of different skills. I wouldn't tell anyone to make it a goal to work at a magazine. I would tell them, work at telling a story and get really good at, talking on camera or operating a camera or, computer graphics or, learn the story from start to finish and do it yourself. If you can make a video and do the whole thing and film it and edit yourself and host it, you're better off than a guy who can only type, And then the second thing is I really believe this is you can't just write about things you're not involved in. And so I don't think anyone should write about a feature on a vehicle if they're not intimately familiar with how that vehicle is built. And I don't mean like they know the story of the vehicle. I mean, they understand what it's like to, body drop a truck. And so, because I think a lot of detail gets lost when somebody that has never body dropped a truck tries to write about a truck that's body dropped.
I concur.
And so I think the more hands-on you are, especially if you're going to be a journalist or a host or whatever it is, I think the more hands-on you are, the better off you are. Your stories will have more detail. They'll resonate with not only people that own trucks, but the guys that build them. They'll respect you more, because you'll be one of them. They know you're not just a poser, just with a bunch of cool adjectives.
Hells yeah. Well, I recently felt really good, Mike. I know you've been in the print and different media industries for a long time, and there's a guy down here in South Florida, Tom Bennett. He's been in Negative Camber, Florida a long time. 65 Lincoln, beautiful car. And as you would imagine, the Lincolns don't get a lot of love. And I run the Lincoln Addict page. And I was able to help him with a friend of ours, Beth and Rich, at All Time Low magazine. And when I wrote the feature, it was kind of like an intimate type, thing where I can write it because I know a lot about these cars. I'm not an expert with the motors and things like that, but I know what has to be fixed and whatnot. So it's always a pleasure being able to write a feature based upon something that you're real passionate about.
Yeah, and that's just it. Is like you said, you might know not know about motor, but the little quirks of that particular car, and so you're the right guy to write about it. Like I don't know Lincolns at all. I know in 65 you could get rear suicide doors.
Right.
I'd be the wrong guy. I would literally be the wrong guy. But if somebody wanted to talk about bagging and body dropping one, okay, I could write that. But the car itself, I am not an expert on that. So you're the right guy to write that, and I am not.
Well, anytime Hot Rod Magazine wants to feature one, just send them my way and I'll write it. No charge. Just messing.
Deal.
But so kind of the last question, we'll wind down with some of your different social media outlets. But I wanted to ask, like, hot rod industry, you talked about the magazine industry. We know as much as we love flipping the pages, things change. Taxis are one day going to be gone. Uber and Lyft take over. But when you think of the hot rod industry in 15 years, I know this is kind of a stage question a little bit, but do you see, we're seeing manufacturers go electric. We're seeing, talks of Indy cars and things like that. Do you see the same passion, maybe just with more fuel efficiency, or do you see us as fucking outlaws running these big 454 motors, like hoodlums we are?
Well, there's a couple of things that work there. First off, the noise is important. The noise is a really, really crucial part of hot rodding. So there's one reason there alone that, electric cars are not going to take over our industry. But efficiency, you can't have efficiency without performance. So if you can make an engine more efficient, it's going to be more powerful. So a lot of the stuff we're seeing in modern cars, that is going to keep trickling down into hot rodding. Better cylinder heads, hell, some of the stuff that they're doing right now with plasma lining cylinders and, just stuff they're doing to reduce friction, that stuff's all going to end up in the hot rod world. We're going to have that. And what you're going to see is we're going to end up with cars that just make more power than you could back in the day with a Roots blower and a set of cast iron cylinder heads. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing wrong with that. But as far as electric cars taking over, it'll never happen in the hot rod world, just because you don't have that noise, you don't have the vibration, you don't have the rumble. That's the stuff that makes putting some of these parts on our car that cost a lot of money. Yep. That's what makes it worthwhile.
It blows my mind seeing, some of the older episodes. I think when you first moved to your place in Georgia, how you were putting the motors together and stuff. And it does really blow my mind where, the average guy is going to look and go, man, that's just a motor. But there's so much more behind it. And I think science plays a big part of it, of course. And to your point, hey, that's the future, man. Make things more efficient, get the heat out of there, make more power. That's what hot rodding's about.
Definitely.
So as we kind of, wrap it up here, I know you embrace many different social media aspects, and we'll talk about them here. We'll kind of give a rundown. But what's your favorite, and this is really the last question, what's your favorite part of interacting with fans? Because I would imagine that you kind of have, an awesome fan base, especially just with Facebook alone, or YouTube alone.
Oh, the best part about all of it is that you can interact with people. It's allowed me to see things and do things that I wouldn't even know exist had social media not been a big part of my life. I could probably, and this isn't a statement about how cool I am. It's a statement about how connected this world is. Mm-hmm. You could probably go anywhere in the world and find somebody to have a beer with that's heard your podcast. And thanks to Roadkill and the other things I've done, it's the same way. I mean, if you break down anywhere, you can put a post on Facebook, somebody's going to have the part you need. You know, it's made road tripping a lot less scary, and I think it's made a lot of people who didn't think they were car people take that leap. It's taken some of the fear away, and so social media kicks ass, even with, you know, some of the drama that comes along with it. It's still a good thing.
Hell yeah. Well, hey, you wrapped it up very nicely there. I know you've got YouTube, you've got Finnegan's Garage, which we've talked about. On Twitter, it's Mike at Mike Finnegan 999. And then you also, can you just give us a little insight about FSMgarage.com?
Yeah, I think, you know, someday when my television career is over, I'll probably open a shop again. And so Finnegan's Garage at the moment is just the garage under my house. It's where I work on my own stuff, and I figure if I'm going to be down there working on it, I might as well get out my iPhone and shoot it and, you know, put some of the content on YouTube. So that's what Finnegan's Garage is. And FSMgarage.com is just a shopping cart where I sell T-shirts and hats and stickers, and I use all that money to buy bacon and beer and parts to keep my cars running.
Hell yeah. Well, the Jerry Rig University, that's got to be one of the classic shirts, man. I love that one.
Oh, man, it's one of my favorites.
Well, Mike, we always enjoy seeing the content. You know, you've had a great career, and we wish someone like yourself that's a humble guy that respects the culture, you know, from mini trucking to hot rods to freaking boats, dude. We love it all. We appreciate you taking time to sit down. Was there anything that else you wanted to share with the Airhead Nation?
God, I don't know, off the top of my head, I don't know, man. Oh, dude, I got elected into the Mini Trucking Hall of Fame.
I know, you know what? And I should have brought that up earlier. I did see that, bro. That's sick, man. Congrats.
I'm so excited about this. Yeah, dude, it's going to be rad. I can't wait. I'm more excited about going to SEMA this year than I ever have been because, you know, I'm going to go get one of those cool rings, which if I don't hurry up and tell Mike Alexander what size I am, because I don't know what size I am, I probably won't have the ring.
Yeah, well, when we talked about the Mini Truck OG earlier, I meant to kind of scoot that in there. But if anyone just Googles Mini Truck Hall of Fame, you'll land on the Facebook page, and there's a lot of good information there. Mike, as you mentioned, back on April 4th, you were elected in as a journalist. And, you know, hey, we salute you, bro. You've paid your dues, and you continue to kind of reap the benefits of hard work. Last thing I'd say is, you know, give a shout-out to your family and anyone else you want to shout out, man.
Oh, man, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. And thanks, everyone, for supporting Roadkill and Finnegan's Garage. And keep building lower trucks, dude. They make me happy.
Hells yeah, Mike. Well, all I got for you is I want my $2, man. But, hey, thanks again, brother. We appreciate you. We just want to say we got you.